This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO FY Investment Group and your host of Washington Current Review, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today we are fortunate to have a guest who is an executive editor of India Abroad, a leading newspaper in the United States and all over the globe. And we want to express our deep gratitude for his leadership as he serves our community so well. His name is Aziz Hanifa. Welcome to our show. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, you're very welcome, Frank. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I want to start out where we are with U.S.-India relationship, where we're going. As President Obama says, a defining moment, in relationship between the U.S. and India. Is still being defined?
I would say so, yes, even though there was some concern during the initial months of the Trump administration. And as you know, both President Trump and Prime Minister Modi had a very good meeting in June of 2017. But then on, they had also discussed the fact that there would be a 2+2 meeting, which was going to be the successor to the strategic and commercial relations.
Which has occurred not too long ago.
Not too long ago, yes. But that got postponed a couple of times.
Twice.
And it was really not due to anything to do with the relationship. But then, of course, Rex Tillerson got fired by Trump as Secretary of State. And then, of course, Mike Pompeo, who took over, had to go off to North Korea. And in the interim, President Trump was making all these remarks about trade issues with India. And he was very angry that Harley-Davidson was being charged increased tariffs by India. There were sanctions placed on Indian aluminium and steel exports, etc. And then, of course, as usual, he was mimicking Narendra Modi, making some condescending remarks, etc. So there was a lot of concern. But I think after the 2+2, which took place a month ago, and there was Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mattis who got there, I think the relationship is back on track in a lot of ways.
Is it deepened?
It has, in a sense, it has deepened.
Broadened?
Broadened, especially in the strategic and defense relationship, where I think there is a little bit of a transactional relationship also, because India is a huge buyer of U.S. defense equipment, gone from zero almost about a decade ago to almost about 15 billion.
They're the largest.
Yeah, lots of that.
Buyer, yeah.
So, and then of course there is that expectation on the U.S. side that India can be a counterweight to an increasingly aggressive and so-called expansionist China. Although India makes clear that it has no intention at all of being like a surrogate vis-a-vis China, and wants to protect its strategic autonomy very, very strongly, and makes no bones about it.
Is there any kind of irritant between the relationship that could potentially be a problem in the future?
I have a feeling the irritants would be essentially on trade matters. The
trade?
On trade. And
what about the tariff?
It's and tariffs, trade, etc. Where when the U.S. imposed some sanctions on India and some tariffs, etc., India also hit back with a few tariffs, etc. And there was a little bit of a tit for tat. And of course, Trump likes bilateralism more than he likes multilateralism. That's why he doesn't see any sense in the WTO and even EU, etc. He likes to have bilateral trade relationships. And of course, I think a lot of these things will be hammered out when the U.S.-India Trade Policy Forum meets, I believe, next month.
I understand the Secretary of Commerce is going there.
Yes, yeah. And so I think that's where I think they are trying to reach some sort of modus vivendi and try to reach some sort of rapprochement so that these irritants don't get out of hand to the extent that, and essentially, like a lot of people say that they feel good that the adults in the room, that's Pompeo and Mattis, are sort of taking the relationship forward and trying to take it to the next level. And to a certain extent, we'll have to expect a few swipes and remarks, etc., from the president. But then, of course, I think in a lot of ways, the U.S.-India relationship, sort of the strategic partnership, has been on autopilot for a while, and I think it will remain so. But whether there would be any high-level meetings, maybe a visit by Trump in the near future to India. I don't know, even though he has an open invitation, and the Indians would love him if he would come to attend the Republic Day ceremony in January. But you know the thing with Trump, he likes to be the first. Yeah. And the fact that President Obama, who is like his nemesis, was the historic person.
I went with him.
Yeah. Who was historic and was the first ever U.S. president,
correct.
Not only to go to this U.S. Republic Day and be the chief guest. Right. Trump would never like to be the second or the third or whatever, you know. So that is left to be seen. But I think the relationship is pretty good, and I think that 2+2 meeting, which had very good reviews, I think, to a great extent, and where there was a lot of agreements, defense, military, etc., that were signed, I think was put any sort of doubts that the relationship was wanting, I think, back on track.
What's your thoughts on Indian diaspora playing an important role in this kind of a relationship? They played a very important role in US-India nuclear deal.
Absolutely.
And what can they do to be politically engaged, to politically active, to make sure that the relationship is headed in the right direction and also deepens and broadens?
Yeah, I think the Indian diaspora, when it comes to sort of zero in on the relationship, I think they are all in, even though there has been a lot of polarization, in fact, in the Indian diaspora, you know, among the Democrats and the Republicans, and of course, and within the Republican Party itself, you know, they all say that it's not the GOP anymore, it's the Trump party.
Correct.
Yeah, but I think one great advantage is the U.S. Congress, where I think it's a given now that both in the House and in the Senate, there are so many friends of India, you know, the India caucus, which is the biggest country caucus in the House, and the Senate India
And it's
caucus.
a bipartisan support.
A bipartisan support. And the fact that a lot of chairmen of various committees, etc., are all for the U.S.-India partnership, I think that augurs well. And the fact that today Indian Americans have good relationships with congressmen,
they're politically engaged.
Very much politically engaged, you know, and politically very savvy today. You know, you get, you know, like Raja Krishnamurthi likes to say, they've got the Samosa caucus in the U.S. House.
Well, and they have three of them.
Absolutely.
Indian.
And then you've got Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Who's
well, she's a half.
Yeah. But a good half.
Good half.
Yeah. And a very, very, and a half with a lot of gravitas and a superb and articulate orator and a speaker, etc. So that augurs well, I think, in terms of the diaspora's role, because in addition to the big diaspora with its influence and clout and gravitas, etc., you now also have Indian Americans in the Congress and led by the Dean Ami Bera, who are playing a very catalytic role.
They're playing a very important role.
Yeah.
But the questions about the Indian diaspora and not the political engagement, but what about the engagement that can help India achieve its fullest potential? They have the capacity, the capability, and the responsibility.
Yeah. I think in that sense, I think I'm glad, and I think it's something that's been appreciated, I hope, very much by India too, in terms of the development philanthropy that's going on. And I remember listening to you during one of your recent speeches where you spoke about purposeful philanthropy.
Very well said.
Yeah, which is what it should be all about. And I think to a great extent, and the fact that you disseminated that information and you almost made it into sort of a theme in terms of purposeful philanthropy.
Thank you very much.
To a great extent, I think that's what is happening.
Well, we have given it several $1 million to build its management complex in Auditorium Ali Muslim University.
And I think the most important thing that they have to be sustainable. Like on Saturday night, I was at the Pratham DC Gala.
Okay.
Yeah, and the amazing work they are doing in terms of alleviating education, illiteracy, etc. And it was very interesting to find that apparently India has done very well in terms of student enrollment, but the literacy rates apparently are still waning. So I think that is where it is important, where in addition to building and facilities, etc., you still have to have what, as you call, purposeful philanthropy, where not just development and infrastructure that's been built in, you have to make sure that's sustained and that there is sort of an exponential progress being made.
Very well said. And obviously the purpose is philanthropy, which is very powerful. is to have exponential returns. It's not a charity, it's an investment.
Absolutely.
That can yield exponential returns. That's an important aspect. I wanted to talk a little bit about freedom of press in the United States and India. As you know, the freedom of press is the cornerstone of democracy. It's the pillar of nation. And so you have a fake news, so how do you go about separating the facts from fiction? And you are a journalist. What's going on in India and also in the United States?
I think as a journalist, and I think all journalists are quite concerned over sort of this whole thing about fake news and the president's remark that the media is the enemy of the people.
Which
that's
is,
unbelievable.
It is.
You know, and I think that's something to be concerned of. And also in India, where
some of the journalists got killed.
Have got killed, and there is so much of trolling of journalists, you know, targeting of journalists, you know, investigative journalists, and of course India also. You know, there was a crusading journalist, a very progressive journalist who was killed, and to this day, no justice has been found for her killing. So that's extremely unfortunate, and in some ways it also has to do a lot with social media. You know, the proliferation of social media, where it makes it very easy to plant stories, to incite people. Like for
incite violence.
Incite violence, and the trolling that goes on with social media, you know, and also the fact that you know, we all know how the Russians played
in U.S. election.
In U.S. elections,
no, and you're absolutely right.
And in the other sense, unlike in the good old days where there was one big story, now the president, you know, he keeps tweeting all the time. You know, you don't know which story to follow. You've got like about 10, 15 stories, which are all big stories.
That's very unfortunate. We have been a global beacon of hope of democracy, freedom of press around the world. And we need to continue that path, because we are the global leader of the world.
And the unfortunate thing, and some of the remarks being made by the president, and the trolling that he does, and the fact that he keeps on shouting
it's
fake
a truly
news.
demeaning and demonizing.
And apart from that, it's also giving you know, some kind of a signal and condoning that goes on among other authoritarian leaders.
You're absolutely
You've got the Filipino guy and guys in Central America and all that.
So he does like autocracy.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know,
I want to change the subject and talk about your view on India-Pakistan relationship, India-Afghanistan relationship. Where we are, what we need to do.
In a lot of ways, it was unfortunate that after Imran,
the
meeting was cancelled. You know, after the killing of some officers, you know, by militants.
But they just need to continue on the path forward.
And I was reading some of the press reports, etc., by a lot of opinion makers and analysts and others saying that you know, India shouldn't have postponed the meeting, or you know, completely said no to the meeting between the foreign ministers at the UN, which is going on in New York. You know, I really wish that there would be some sort of rapprochement and some sort of and both. There was a lot of encouragement. The US was very happy. They made some very good remarks saying that we hope that there would be this rapprochement, but being very careful as usual in terms of the US policy, that there would be no involvement, mediation, nothing of the sort, that this is something that has to be sorted out between the countries, etc. But I wish that, because just think in terms of just trade and people-to-people interactions, connections, etc. You know, and SAARC, you know, which cuts a sorry figure today. You know, SAARC should have been way ahead of ASEAN. You know, this reminds me of how, you know, being Sri Lankan, and the fact that Sri Lanka was once being held up as a model of development. And when Lee Kuan Yew came to Colombo once, he had said, this is what I want Singapore to become, you know. And now look at Singapore.
So that was a model.
Yeah. So I think, and SAARC could have been that way before the ASEAN. And then all of this spills over to Afghanistan also, you know, where there is so much of paranoia. You know, the Pakistanis get so paranoid about Indian involvement in Afghanistan, even if it is only for development and infrastructure,
which is what they're doing.
Which is what they're doing, and they've done great work, you know, building hospitals, building community centers, etc. So in that sense, I wish that there would be, the leadership would show the way, and I think it still calls for that kind of Atal Bihari Vajpayee kind of yatra, I think, you know, so that you could resurrect the relationship.
Unfortunately, India's election is coming, and they use Pakistan as a target to to energize
Yes.
the base,
Yeah.
which is very,
Yeah.
very sad.
Yeah.
And
And,
especially
and it's very interesting that there are a lot of similarities between the U.S.,
Yes.
the Trump administration,
But-
and where they want to make sure that there is no dissipation of the sort of strong feelings the base has, and then this can energize
I
the
really
base.
don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it
Yeah.
can go on.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much for coming.
What a pleasure.
Aziz.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, this is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.